On this episode of the Appalachian Food Evangelist, it's harvest time at Capitol Market here in Charleston, West Virginia. I'll be doing some shopping, visiting local salt works, and pairing craft beer with the perfect autumn meal. It's gonna be good. I'm Dale Hawkins. I'm a chef, a farmer, and a man on a perpetual quest for the best in West Virginia food and foodways, and I love to share. I'm the Appalachian Food Evangelist. I think one of the biggest things that I like about Capitol Market is that when I'm in Charleston, I have a go-to place. If I ever need to know that I can get something fresh, that's local, that is not typical of items that I would get in a grocery store, I have a place that I can go to and get them, whether it's outdoor in the market or indoor at the Purple Onion. How are you?
Pretty good. How are you?
Good. Those are good looking onions. I think one of the things that you'll notice when I'm shopping, I'll actually pick the product up, I'll check it for blemishes and that kind of thing, but I'll actually put it up to my nose or my face and really take a deep breath, and that tells me if it's ready or not. The strawberries and the peaches got me today. It was just like, oh God, we're here, we've arrived. Among the folks I'll be cooking for this evening is Stephen Keith. Stephen is a popular food critic for the Charleston Gazette known as the Food Guy. But even more important to me is the fact that it was Stephen who labeled me the Appalachian Food Evangelist in an article a few years back. So I want to deliver something a little extra special for him. So tonight we're going to serve a meal beginning with a salad from Mock's Greenhouse. We're going to do the burgoo, the traditional burgoo. And for dessert, we're going to have apple cinnamon flapjacks with Ellen's ice cream and maple syrup. We're also going to pair that with a Big Timber ale. We're going to start making the burgoo, and the first thing that I'm going to do is add olive oil to our Dutch oven. We'll let that get smoking hot, like really smoking hot. I'm not kidding, it's smoking, so let's go. So the thing to remember about a burgoos always have three kinds of meat. It doesn't matter what kind of meat it is, and a lot of the times when this was made in a lumber camp, they put whatever meat they had. So it could be bear, it could be rabbit, it could be whatever walked or flew and is now dead goes into your burgoo. Today we're going to do pork, chicken, and beef. So the first process in making burgoo is searing the meat. I have three kinds of meat here, pork, chicken, and beef. We're going to put that in some smoking hot olive oil. Not hot enough until you hear that sizzle. You're going to go about 4 minutes on each side. So we want to let that sear for about 2 or 3 minutes. So I had the good fortune today of picking up these ingredients at the Capitol Market. We did a little shopping spree earlier, so I'm going to go ahead and start adding the aromatics. We'll begin with the onions, carrots, and celery. And to that, we're going to add about 2 or 3 cloves of minced garlic or microplaned garlic. Okay, we'll give that a stir. Now what we're looking for now is to have a translucent onion, carrot, celery. We want this to cook down for about 5 minutes, and then we're going to begin adding the rest of the vegetables to the burgoo. Beginning with peppers, cabbage, corn, and potatoes. The history behind burgoo is that it was made primarily in lumber camps. Now there's a place in West Virginia called Burgoo, It's actually in Webster Springs, and every year they have a burgoo festival. Typically happens in October, and this burgoo festival, they actually have a burgoo cook-off, and there's usually about 30 to 50 participants that do it. I was actually a judge at this festival one year, and oftentimes you have to have a strong stomach to judge a cooking competition. You never know what's going to end up there. And this is especially the case with burgoo, because literally people show up with bear, rabbit. I mean, there's some really bizarre things that go into this, because if you look at the history of burgoo, it's whatever they had at the time. Now, this typically happened in the late 1800s when the lumber camps were big. And so when they made it, they would make it in a huge pot. They had to feed a couple hundred people at a time. Most recipes have 3 meats. And a traditional burgoo, it'll tell you that it has to have 3 meats. We like to lighten it up now that we come to modern day. We tend to put a little more vegetables and that kind of thing in it. To back it up to the actual cooking competition that they have in burgoo, we actually had some that was made with trout, frog, and I forget what the other one was, but it was more of a seafood type thing. Crawdads was the other thing. So not necessarily there's a traditional recipe. I guess a lot of you would equate it to something like a beef vegetable soup. So burgoo actually is a stew, and I think it's a derivative of the French ragout. Not I think, I know it is. That's where it gets its roots from. So we're gonna have this, we're gonna put dried beans into this because this is actually gonna cook for about 5 or 6 hours. So these are pinto beans. I have about a quart of concentrated crushed tomatoes. We're gonna add about 6 quarts of water, and we're gonna let this simmer for about 4 or 5 hours. It's important to let burgoo cook that long because it lets all those flavors marry together. Typically, the meats that go into it are tough, so you want them to cook for a long time. I had a great conversation today with Lindsay Good over at Grits Farm. We talked about agritourism and corn mazes, and we had a real good time. So there's an awesome opportunity for agritourism in West Virginia, and I understand Grits is playing a big part of that.
Absolutely. Grits Farm, aside from being a huge agricultural farm, has really realized that we have an opportunity to bridge that gap between the education system and the farm and the food that we grow. And we've done that through our Fall Fun Farm. And we invite up to 500 school kids a day, 4 days a week, within a 6-week time frame. We provide them with hands-on educational activities, learning about hydroponics, how plants are grown, the life cycle of a seed, and so on.
So I think it's really great what you guys are doing, and I think it's really important for kids to understand where their food comes from. And it seems to me like they eat better and they're more willing to eat it. In addition to agritourism, I understand you guys are doing a lot of specialty crops.
Yes, absolutely. We have a huge pick-your-own pumpkin patch with a couple different varieties of pumpkins. We have lots of mums for people because mums are a huge crop in the fall, as well as, are you familiar with delicata squash?
Love delicata squash. I'm actually doing a little cooking segment tonight, and I'd like to use that or something like that in that dish.
They're tasty. Well, delicata squash are one of 20 different varieties that we grow.
All right, we're going to make a really good salad out of hydroponic greens that came from right out here in the out here in the market. It's a really simple one. I'm going to start with a basic vinaigrette recipe. It's real simple: extra virgin olive oil, red wine vinegar, garlic, a little bit of JQ, some whole grain mustard, and that's it. So we're going to take about 2 tablespoons of whole grain mustard, pop it into our bowl. We're going to take 2 cloves of garlic, microplane that right into it. 1, 2. About a quarter of a cup of red wine vinegar, a half a cup of extra virgin olive oil. I always use a 2-to-1 ratio of olive oil to vinegar. And I'll tell you a little secret here. It's not extra olive oil. I use a blend of olive oil and canola oil because if you ever put olive oil in the fridge, it coagulates. So it's not all that great. I'm going to finish it off with a little bit of JQ, probably about a tablespoon, 3, 4, and we're going to whisk that together. This actually makes an emulsified dressing. If you use any kind of mustard with your oil vinegar mix, it emulsifies it. And what that means is it pulls it together so it doesn't separate. So here's how easy this salad is. We're going to use whole leaves. This is all hydroponically grown. This is the butter crunch. So we're just going to cut it right into the bowl. And I'm looking for flavor, texture, and color. So we've got the butter crunch. This is a little bit of frisee. That's a little bit of root. This is red oak leaf. And a little bit of green oak leaf. And that's all it takes. Now, you'll have to pretend for a minute that I have a pair of tongs in my hand. These are my tongs. Now, it may seem unorthodox to be using your hands, but God gave you these hands. Use them. That's your salad. Now, if you want to add anything else to it, I could recommend a couple of things. The beets that we found out in the market today, I would just take those, peel them, and shred them right on top of the salad. We also found some really cool strawberries over at Grits. And you could cap those and throw those into it, make a really nice salad. They're all specialty food crops, and all available right here in the market. So through the miracle of television, 6 hours later, we have some really awesome burgoo. It smells pretty good, looks good, because I know you all can see this up here, right? So what I want to do now, there's two steps at the very end that I always like to do to my burgoo. Most burgoos will call for things like Worcestershire sauce, steak sauce. I've seen some recipes call for ketchup. That's a little bit of a stretch for me, so I've incorporated a couple of West Virginia products. Ramp hot sauce, good stuff, and it's a little fiery. And I visited J.Q. Dickinson Salt Works today down in Malden, and it's always fascinating every time we go down there. We're here at J.Q. Dickinson Salt Works in Malden, West Virginia. I'm here with Nancy Bruns, the proprietor, one of the proprietors.
We're glad to have you.
Well, thanks.
Thanks for coming by.
Sure thing. So, can you talk to us a little bit about the process that you use?
Sure. So we're on top of the ancient Ipitus Ocean, which has been redissolved by a freshwater aquifer. So we pump up brine from 350 feet underground. We put it in our big sun houses, let it evaporate and crystallize, and we hand harvest it. It's about a 5-week process.
And it tastes so good.
It does. Thank you.
One of the things that I wanted to talk to you about in particular, our focus is really on specialty crops, but how salt plays such an important role into the preservation of those crops, i.e. sauerkraut, pickles, pickled beets, anything that's pickled.
Anything.
Do you do any brining or pickling?
I do, mostly for my own use. We've got people who are making kimchi with our salt, sauerkraut, all kinds of pickles. They do other preserving like bacon. All of that needs salt in it. So
all that good stuff.
All that good stuff.
A lot of people in and out of West Virginia would be really surprised at how big of an industry salt was here. It was really important before we had refrigerators, right?
preservation was hugely important, and you couldn't live without salt. People actually preferred to be paid in salt rather than cash. Actually, the word salary comes from the word salt, and they knew if they had salt, they could live because they could hunt and they could grow their food and they could preserve it and they could live through the winter.
So are you seeing a movement toward some of these food preservation techniques?
Absolutely. There's a big, I was just at the Heritage Harvest Festival over in Monticello over the weekend, and the number of fermenters, kombucha, people making pickles, people preserving their meats, people are back on the land and they're doing it themselves, and they're coming up with these great businesses, and there are consumers out there that really want that.
Absolutely. I have to tell you, I did a farm dinner here with you back in July, I think it was, but I've also been going up to Kentuck Knob, Frank Lloyd Wright property, and every time I do a dinner there, I take your salt with me and sell it all.
Well, thank you very much.
Absolutely. So what I want to do to finish this off is, this is their grinding salt. Doesn't matter that I'm not grinding it because it's going to go into the soup and kind of dissipate anyways. And then I'm going to add a little bit of heat to it. I like heat. I hope everyone here does.
So you were mentioning J.Q. Dickinson salt. I just heard recently that the #1 restaurant in the country and the #1 chef in the country, Thomas Keller at the French Laundry, is using J.Q. Dickinson salt as restaurants. And he said he has sourced, our artisan salt from all around the country, and he has not found anything better. So he's now using it in his restaurants in Napa Valley and New York.
Yes, they should. JQ is something really special. So I'm going to start you off with a little bit of salad, and then we'll serve some burgoo, and then we're going to go right on to dessert. This is pretty close to a traditional burgoo without the heat. Consistency-wise, literally a lot of people will make their burgoo and let it cook for 10, 12 hours till the meat's falling apart and it's so shredded. How about you? Good burgoo? You haven't even got to the burgoo yet. What about, yeah, you went straight for it, didn't you? Good. Do you? So obviously I didn't measure anything, so it did get a little bit tart. But I tasted it and added more lettuce, so it would kind of stretch it out. Thanks.
Chef, the dressing is so good.
How good is it?
It's really good. It has, it's very tart, but not puckering.
I tend to microplane it so I don't have big chunks of garlic in there. It's kind of just, I love big chunks too, but of garlic.
No, it's so, it's very like tart.
Yeah, so it's 2-to-1 ratio, olive oil to vinegar. And I typically will use red wine vinegar. And then the key to it is to make sure you have enough salt in it, because if you don't have that salt, it doesn't balance it out. Yeah. So what I'd really recommend to go with this meal today is a really good West Virginia craft beer. And I had a couple today with a specialist in hops, Brad from West Virginia State University. Brad, the meal that I'm working on tonight at Capital Market, I'm pairing beer with. And I know that hops play a really valuable role in the development of the flavor of beer, and I understand that's something that you're working on.
Yeah, we've been doing this, I guess, applied research more so than lab type research on hops, because 3 years ago we didn't even know if these things would grow in West Virginia, let alone grow productively and be an avenue for our small farmers to look at. And 3 years later, I think we can definitely stand up and say this is something that farmers in West Virginia can be looking at.
So the craft brew scene's really expanding here in West Virginia. Do you see the hops playing part of that?
Oh, absolutely. As craft beer really expands, and we've seen it in other states exterior to West Virginia, but as craft beer expands in West Virginia, they want to incorporate as many local products as they can and local crops. So if we want to have local beer, then why not have local hops included?
We're gonna make some apple cinnamon flapjacks with ice cream and maple syrup. So, real simple, eggs, flour, sugar, cinnamon, baking powder, milk, go. So, I'm gonna go 2 eggs. We're gonna whisk that together. Add about a cup of milk. That looks like a cup. I'm gonna add 2.5 cups of all-purpose flour, a little bit of baking powder, 2 tablespoons of sugar, half a teaspoon of cinnamon. So the key to a good pancake is not to overmix it. So you just want to stir it until it comes together. And my cup may have been a little bit short, so I'm going to add a little bit more. And the only other thing that I'm going to add to this is some shredded apple. These are some really good McIntosh, actually I think they're Empire apples that we got out at the stand today. So we're going to do skin and all. You can be as messy as you want to with this. It's all going in there. It's really great exercise. Okay, that's 2 apples. I'm going to fold this into the pancake batter. Okay. So we're going to gently fold in the apples. Now you should have a batter that looks something like that. While I've been mixing this up, I've preheated a griddle, and it's probably no secret but that I like butter. Like, I like a lot of butter. So we just want to put maybe a couple of nice big pats on there to grease it up. So the only thing you have to do here is small. You want to think small because this is dessert. We've already eaten salad. We've already eaten burgoo. And if you're going to eat a stack of these flapjacks with ice cream and maple syrup on it, you might want to think about the portion size. Yeah, so I learned a lot about maple syrup today. Alan Hathaway down at the West Virginia Marketplace, he carries about 10 different kinds, all from West Virginia. Really good stuff, and you're going to have it here tonight. How you doing?
I'm good.
Hey, does the West Virginia Marketplace carry maple syrup?
You bet we carry maple syrup. We carry several products made from maple syrup. Our award-winning maple syrup made here in West Virginia from small batch.
Why is it award-winning?
It's some of the best in the country. It has a great sugar content and a great maple flavor. Even our maple sugar here is award-winning as well.
Oh, that's great. A lot of the things that you have here are specialty crops that are, I guess, pushed into a jar.
That's correct.
Like?
Well, we have some of our small batch jams and jellies called Jam, and they have specialty products like the salted watermelon jelly as well as the tomato jam.
That sounds really cool. I love that creative, sweet, savory idea that they put in a jar. So this is Allegheny Treenware. It's really cool stuff, made here in West Virginia. Stan and Sue Jennings up in Thornton, West Virginia make these, and they have a really great operation. So I'm going to flip these over. You're going to go about 2 minutes on this side, and then we'll be ready to plate it. Okay, so we're going to do 3 flapjacks in a serving because I know y'all are going to be real hungry here tonight, right? 3 flapjacks, a nice big scoop of vanilla ice cream from Ellen's. Right on top. And then we found this really tasty maple syrup from Cedar Run. And boom! Join us for the next episode of the Appalachian Food Evangelist. It'll be wintertime, but that don't mean we can't eat well. The Appalachian Food Evangelist is made possible by a USDA Specialty Crop Block Grant, the West Virginia Department of Agriculture, and Wild Wonderful West Virginia. #GO2WV.